Martin, thanks so much for joining me on your podcast today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Before we dive into the topic of today, which is, of course, Gen AI, let's learn a little bit more about yourself first. You've worked with a number of exciting technology companies. Would you mind just giving us a high-level overview of some of the past experiences over the past years?
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. I worked in consulting actually since 2016. I studied at the Technical University of Munich, AI related already. 2016, on the edge, 2016, 2017, I joined then a consultancy. Then at some point I was at IBM Consulting. I was a data science lead. And already holding up the generative AI flag strongly. And up until last year, I was the generative AI lead for Europe for Infosys.
Mm.
In the meantime, I also wrote a book on generative AI with Wiley
Wow.
together, publisher Wiley, and founded generativei.net. But this, yeah, not as my main job. But since this year, this is my main job. I have an AI consultancy, and yeah, we build products and also training courses once in a while, and have an online newsletter. And yeah, that's me basically.
No, thank you so much. We can definitely talk about your company in a moment, but let's maybe zoom out a little bit first and talk about the Gen AI landscape out there. What is your perspective on the stage of Gen AI across the industries you've worked with? Do you see major differences? How developed do you think some of the Gen AI programs, especially within the incumbents, are? Are there any general trends you've observed?
Yeah, so last year especially, it started very big in the consulting scene. Yeah, so with Infosys, I was twice or maybe thrice a week. I was talking to clients, execs, C-level executives on how they have like hundreds of ideas sometimes, ideas on how to implement AI because they have tried out with AI. That was basically also I think one of the biggest impacts that everyone all of a sudden could try out things and see in real time what is actually possible. So from bottom up, not only from top down, but also bottom up, lots of ideas came through because, like you can accelerate your career if you have great ideas and they are successful. So lots of bottom up ideas came up, and we were talking, or I was talking regularly with execs, still do so, but now under my own brand. And we were discussing many topics and also realizing a couple of these projects. Most conversations, I would say 99% of the conversations, and then also projects that we have implemented are where you have a huge knowledge corpus. And again, databases can be unstructured information, and you have regularly questions against this knowledge corpus. So, for instance, one project that we were leading, that we were implementing for an international container shipping company. So international container shipping means, you have regulations from in one country to another, or maybe transition country, and then there are overarching regulations. So really a lot of regulation is there, depending also on what you ship. Yeah. And so their clients from that container shipping company, they were asking regularly up to 1 million of emails per year. Yeah. They were asking, hey, I want to ship used cars or pharmaceutical goods from China to Zimbabwe. Yeah. And then you can imagine, like, then the internal worker would go on the databases, would scan through all the databases and would copy and paste, put it together, and then reason through it. Takes up to 4 hours to answer an email like this. And we have basically developed an AI system based on a RAG architecture, retrieval augmented generation, that takes the email on the fly, extracts the intent, posts that against all of the databases, retrieves the information, then asks a language model to phrase it nicely, translate on the fly, and the internal worker. This has been done in like 1 minute. The internal worker just cross-reads it, sends it out. So huge cost savings are possible, and yeah, this is sort of like that was like one of the flagship projects that we had, and has been replicated in many different industries. This is not industry specific. It's really a
Mm.
functionality across. And yeah, we have seen much more.
No, it's fascinating. What I've seen a lot is with companies I talk to and senior leaders is that there are lots of ideas, lots of promise, lots of blue sky around the potential of Gen AI across basically the entire enterprise, across all business units. And then there are some proof of concepts. Most of them don't really scale as initially promised in the business case. I was just wondering if this is also your experience, and if so, why do you think that's the case with some of these large incumbents?
Mhm. So first of all, I think so I also have observed that. So with one client, we had like a shortlisted 40 use cases,
Mm,
and then lots has been tested out, and then maybe we have top three, because you also have to calculate return on invest. There's lots of planning has to happen for this, and you want to go for the low-hanging fruits first, maybe, and learn along the way. But then, of course, the majority of it doesn't come to life ever, or just in a POC and then it gets stopped. But I think this is fair, and this was also before in consulting the case. There were always more ideas. There were many POCs.
mm,
That's also where the name comes from, proof of concept, proving if it works on the concept wise, and that's sort of like a quality gate, yeah, at the end. And it's also fair to say, hey, that was a good thought, good everything, but we now see other problems that were maybe not so
mm,
foreseeable. Maybe it's technically not so easy. Maybe there's not such a response as we expected, and yeah, this can happen that like many ideas are not being brought to production. I assume that might be even more the ratio with current AI projects, generative AI, language models, etc. Because the ideas are so easy. It's so cheap. Yeah, we see, okay, this is possible, this is possible. So it's easier to try out more things. And so maybe that ratio is a bit skewed in that sense. But yeah, I agree.
mm. When it gets to the selection, you mentioned you've worked with a client that identified 40 possible use cases.
Yeah.
How would you recommend organizations, just looking at this as a funnel, identify use cases in the first place, then evaluate them, and then decide which ones to take through the funnel, essentially? Are there any best practices you've observed?
Yeah, a simple way to do that is to map it. So what is the feasibility, the technical feasibility of doing it? Not
Mm,
only the technical feasibility, but also the organizational feasibility. And then what is the expected impact? And then you have already like a two-dimensional sort of
mm,
like landscape. And that helps already to identify the low-hanging fruits. Yeah. So with quite simple, feasible, yeah, very feasible, and higher impact. This probably an impact. What is impact? Yeah, this also needs to be clarified. What impact is being looked at? Mostly it is then there is some dollar attached to it, yeah, but
mm,
not always the case. And yeah, I have these conversations on a very regular basis. It's to a certain degree, it is individual to the client, but generally speaking, I would start with mapping it out like this. I think lots of things are getting already cleared out. Yeah,
You
exactly.
mentioned impact and value there, which is a topic I'm very passionate about. It's sort of a love and hate relationship because it's one that we in automotive struggle with a lot. Lots of finance departments in automotive are fairly traditional when it gets to the metrics they acknowledge for business cases, etc. Do you have any guidance you could share on how organizations could develop business cases that are future oriented, long-term business success oriented, and potentially, especially in light of some of the Gen AI use cases?
Yeah, that's a very valid question, because what we also have seen is that, or also with startups, yeah, and startup idea or within a large organization, I think there is not so much difference at the end. But for instance, many startups have been now launched in the past 18, 24 months. And there's one update from OpenAI or Anthropic, and this whole business model doesn't work anymore. Yeah.
Mm,
I also worked with an image generation company. We had a partnership, but I'm not sure if I can name it. They were doing their images on a GAN architecture, for instance, and they were, there were the early wins were being done with GANs, and then they tried to further improve their GANs, and then Stable Diffusion came out, much better, and they had to sort of like everything like redo and throw away everything that they have learned on that. Okay, that's more on the technical level, but also on the idea level. Yeah, I would see how do you get how do you have a sustainable long-term idea is, I think, if you have some kind of maybe lock in or some proprietary data, because the technology can change in all kinds of directions, and the AI now OpenAI is, I think, about to release their Strawberry model, which is like the GPT-5 version. I saw lots of rumors today on X. I think so when this model comes out, there's very strong in reasoning, yeah, presumably. So, but the technology, you might use these skills, but if you have some core knowledge, some core data set that no one else has, there you have your longevity in an idea, if you think hard. I would make sure it cannot be neglected with one update.
This seems to be one of the mistakes, especially in the automotive industry where I'm coming from, and lots of the leaders I talk to, they seem to try and develop some of these Gen AI use cases on top of everything they basically already own in terms of their enterprise data warehouse, but don't. It seems like there is a missing sort of fundament that is needed for Gen AI. Is this also your experience? And if so, what should this fundament look like?
Yeah, I'm missing. I come back to this in 1 second, but what I also want to say is, like, we have a company like Meta, Mark Zuckerberg. He is very eager to basically slash the whole market in the language model space, because OpenAI and Anthropic and Gemini, these API costs money. And what Meta officially tries to do is, open source their best models. Yeah, the Llama 3.1 is out, 3.5 is out. They're working on Llama 4 already. They plan through it, and they want to open source that as well. And why do they want to do it? Because they believe in the products, sort of, not the models. The model is not the product, but the products based on these models. Yeah. So the next level, that's where they see the money capturing, because they've spent also billions on just training it, and then they release it open source or open weight for everyone to use. And they do it because they really want to harvest and later these or create great products on this nutritious ground. Yeah, and so what do you mean with the foundation? Could you elaborate again on that?
Yeah, so if you think about Gen AI success for some of these incumbents holistically, it currently feels like lots of these use cases are developed in isolation, so in certain business areas, quite disconnected, quite fragmented in terms of how they're being approached, in terms of the underlying data, in terms of how the model is developed or what external partners they work with. But there seems to be a sort of disconnect in terms of this is our overarching Gen AI strategy, and this is how it comes together. Also, just one other example is around workforce applications. I mean, the whole idea is that for some of these use cases that generate huge value is that a large number of people, whether within the organization or customers, potential customers, use the solution. I was just wondering if you feel like we're missing potentially a trick in terms of the holistic nature of making Gen AI a success in some of these large organizations.
Yeah. So I think you said the right words already, like thinking a bit more holistic. On one hand, what is unique data? What is a unique approach? How to have a lock-in effect? How to have partnerships? How to listen to the feedback of the client, and eagerly try to iterate on it to find product market fit, or feature fit. Yeah. I think all of the values or all of the thoughts around building great products, startups, ideas, POCs, and so forth, this is all still valid. Yeah. And I have a little bit the impression that people try to, they like sort of forget that, and they think, AI, we have this AI solution here, and this is fine. But there's there's still so much work around that needs to happen and that needs to be in place, and things need to work out. Partnerships can be very helpful, and eagerly iterating to really match what the potential customers want. This has never changed. This is still the same. And I'm not sure if I have like one specific answer to that, but I observe also that people forget, or organizations, teams forget sometimes to. I'm also advising quite some startups, but and that they neglect what is already known. Yeah.
You're very involved in knowledge sharing around GenAI with your current company. You just mentioned that you've published a book. What would be your guidance for senior leaders in charge of the data and GenAI business units responsible for the organizational-wide education as it relates to GenAI? Are there any particular sort of best practices or ideas you could share in terms of how to approach this topic?
So what I have observed, especially when ChatGPT came out, it took then like sometimes multiple months, where even whole countries and whole organizations said we block that technology. You don't have access to it. The danger is much larger than the opportunity. And I think this is a major mistake, and they have also reverted that. In Italy, it was banned for a moment, and then even in the organization that I was in, Infosys, it was also banned for everyone for some time. They have, I think, unbanned it to a degree. Or some companies, they like a bank client of ours, they have built their own GPT version. That's fair, I guess. So first of all, I would say like have get your hands dirty, try out things, and then also have a platform on how to exchange thoughts. So for instance, we are now launching an online course called Everyone Can Code. A little bit clickbaity, I know, but there's lots of truth to that, because if you know how to interact with an AI in the right way, you can let the AI guide you to develop a software. So for instance, we show in that online course that we have a certain framework where you can create a web application, a fully functional web application, multiple sites, even a game in it, and whatnot, just by knowing how to talk in natural language with an AI. And so what I wanted to say is like in this online course, we also, because we want to promote as much learning as possible, we have also a Discord server where every attendee is can share what they have built and so forth, and showcase it, discuss it. So I think creating like a forum like this is quite important. Yeah.
You mentioned a couple of the incumbent technology players. You mentioned, I don't know, for example, Facebook/Meta, Google, AWS, etc. They all try to integrate GenAI products into their existing solutions that are being widely used. And then you also mentioned OpenAI and some others that are some of the newer entrants in this market that are really successful at the moment. Do you think the incumbents across industries will still look to work with some of these external partners, for example, using a GPT model from OpenAI, for example, or do you think they will lean more towards developing all of that internally?
I think if you want to, as an organization, you want to build a model from scratch, I think and you don't have unlimited funding, I think then it's a really, really hard. Meta is, as I said already, Meta is working on Llama 4 now, and they already spent billions on training Llama 3 or Llama 3.5. And they say they have to 10x that for Llama 4. So one thing is clear, you cannot build it's super hard to come to such a high quality language model or AI model, because it's not only language anymore, it's also natively multimodal. It's really hard to do it yourself. So what is possible is that you take a pre-trained model and you fine-tune it on your very specific data, but only if you really have specific data where fine-tuning is required. Yeah. So if fine-tuning is not even required, so and yeah, how do you know if it's required or not? Like I think it's you have to see, is it like a certain language that is like being adapted, like a very niche language that the language model has not been pre-trained on, then you might want to use that. But if it's really just very unique data, but not so niche, that's not so easy to detect. But if it's not so niche that it has its own language almost, but it's normal English language or normal language with but unique data, then you don't even need to fine tune anymore. So then you can just take some language model through an API, or you take an open source ticket and use it in your systems on the cloud. And then you can, through prompt engineering, you can work through your data and build RAG systems and so forth. There's really not much. Yeah, there's it. Yeah, these are I would take this into account and considering that. Yeah, it's but it depends also on many things. Yeah.
You mentioned the importance of continuously improving the output of our models. What does this feedback loop look like, and what are some of the best practices that you've seen of organizations that manage to improve the quality of output better than others potentially?
Yeah, you want to have a feedback loop from the customers that are using it. With that, yeah, and diligently incorporate that into the product that you have built, because you don't offer a model, you offer a product or service, and you want to really improve that. I think one company that has done it very well is, for instance, Perplexity AI. I use it instead of Google now pretty much every day, 20 times. So this is important, and also to understand when there is a new model out, it's easy. Just replace the API, yeah, and maybe adjust a little bit the prompt. Knowing how to well prompt is also key. Yeah, but I would always like make sure that I have the best model that fits for the given application. That doesn't mean that it's always has to be the best one that exists out there and the biggest one. Maybe sometimes you also want to have a small language models, because there you have the advantage that it's fast. It can answer very fast. And in a voice call, we have for instance, a project with a customer service where people call and talk to a model. They don't want to wait 1 minute for an answer. It has to be immediately. So this is achieved through small language models. Yeah, and so which model do you want, and then incorporating the feedback and being diligent about the prompt is also key. Yeah, exactly.
Thinking about the workforce more widely, in automotive, I guess it's been really interesting over the past couple of years, where we've seen completely different approach when it gets down to, I don't know, the entire topic of software-defined vehicles, connectivity, autonomous driving, in terms of what do we insource, what do we outsource, to what extent do we partner with organizations, how do we structure our digital business units. Thinking about the sort of recent developments with Gen AI, what do you think are the workforce implications from a skills perspective? And do you have any thoughts on how to structure this from an organizational standpoint, or any good or bad examples you've seen?
So what skills are required for the workforce and how to structure it from the organization, yeah?
Yeah.
Let's get so yeah, workforce has to get in touch with it. Should not be afraid. Yeah, you can see positively at this new technology. You can also look negatively at it. But I think, yeah, this has like, what is the upside? How can I? Because typically what's happening when, to be very honest, there will also be jobs that will not be required anymore done by humans. Yeah, foreseeable as self-driving cars, and then people driving, of course, taxi and so forth. Foreseeable. Like what the timeline is maybe debatable, but what typically one can say is that the new jobs that come out of these tech revolutions are typically better than the old ones. They are less mundane, less repeatable, more you can use more of your creative and cognitive abilities. But that's of course not a fit for everyone. And the people that lose their job are probably also not 100% fit for the new jobs. Yeah. So there is definitely sort of like a disruption happening. And yeah, I think a positive attitude and a growth mindset is absolutely key. But this was, again, I was always key, but now it's especially key, because technology was always evolving, maybe not in that fast pace as now. And then from this organizational perspective is promote learning, promote also it's okay to fail. Even zooming out a bit more on country level or governmental level, if we see what is happening in Singapore, for instance, the government of Singapore has announced, I'm not sure about the final number, or something in the billions. They have said everyone who is 40 and above gets $4,000 Singaporean dollars. Yeah, I think it's like dollar, for just upskilling on AI. Just upskill. They have like a national training platform, and for upskilling for AI, you get $4,000 for free. And if you're 35, 36 or something, and you reach 40 at some point, you get the $4,000 as well. And I think this is a fantastic approach to really upskill everyone who is at the bit older. This could also be potentially extended to everyone, but these are the right measures to take. Yeah.
You indirectly alluded to regulation, government intervention. Of course, recently you're based in Germany, I think we've seen the EU AI Act. I was just wondering what your thoughts on the legislative change are.
Yeah, I know it came to power very recently, and they have this risk-based approach, right? So where they analyze sort of like what AI application is this, and then into what risk category it comes. And there is from prohibition, like it's deep fake or within that category, to like high risk, whereas we're dealing with personal data, personal information, and so forth. I think the approach is right. I was afraid for a long time that it's too much innovation stifling, but currently, what I have seen, I don't think this is necessarily happening. I mean, it's also not really in power yet. Potentially this could change, but it's very important is it to balance like some regulation to iron out the malicious behavior, but then also not to stifle the innovative power of the European Union, because to be very frank, in AI we are very far behind. Yeah, the US is strong on the first place. Then we have in China a lot is happening. We don't even see that much, or it's hard to see everything that's happening. But I've also done in my newsletter, I've done a post purely on what's happening of Chinese AI models, and also robots. They have this Astribot S1, extremely precise in what it does. Yeah. A humanoid robot. They have Kling, the video generation model. There's so much happening there. Then we have Saudi Arabia or the Middle East in general. There's also a lot happening in terms of AI. I can speak most comfortably about AI. Yeah, there's also other tech that I think maybe there's probably also a correlation. Yeah. So and the EU must see how do we actually how do we become more competitive in terms of AI innovation or tech innovation?
You mentioned some of the geographical differences with You mentioned the US, you mentioned China, you mentioned the Middle East, you mentioned Central Europe. First of all, what are sort of leading indicators for these differences? So why do you think certain countries are sort of more advanced? And then sort of the natural follow-up question, why do you think that's the case? What are some of the underlying reasons potentially? I guess we're speculating to some extent.
Yeah, not an easy question. So the first part I can answer confidently. So if you look at the LMSys leaderboard, which is the language model leaderboard from Hugging Face, you see the top. There was like maybe the top 15, top 20 language models, and they are competing against each other. Yeah, it's like they have this mechanism in behind, like there's a question, and then users vote which answer is better. Yeah, from these two models that compete against each other. And the first top 15 to top 20 is all not European, 90% US, and then 10% maybe China, and but 90% US by far. And the of course, getting to the top 20 is maybe not that hard as to the top 3. And there we have OpenAI, Gemini, and Anthropic with Claude 3.5 Sonnet, all US American, yeah, and they have multiple versions that they compete against each other. So on the AI side, it's quite clear there's a huge gap. That's the observed. Reason why this is, I mean, when it comes to it, I mean, the Silicon Valley is not there since ChatGPT, yeah, that they are leading the innovative in the IT space, the innovative power. They're the innovative powerhouse since, I don't know, 20 years now, yeah, or more. But yeah, but why this is? I think it has something to do with they are more comfortable in taking risks. What I observe is that in Germany, taking risks is maybe less, like maybe we are a bit more risk averse. I'm not sure what you think about it. I'm also happy to hear what you think. But yeah, taking risks and also celebrating entrepreneurship is, I think, a big thing in the US. Yeah, they do a lot of things right in that regard. But it's, of course, a hyper-capitalistic country, and that doesn't necessarily mean that I want to live there. I like the advancements. I don't like other things that are happening there, but it's true to every country.
Final question from my side. Imagine you're the leader at one of the incumbent organizations, whether one of the industrial giants like Automotive or any other industry, and you're in charge of the internal data and AI business unit, in charge of the organization-wide strategy. What are some of the, let's say, top 3 plus minus 1 recommendations for one of these senior leaders?
Top 1 recommendation for the senior leaders to like on
to
how
make GenAI a success in their environment.
Okay. Yeah, it's also clear that the future will not be this one model. It will be many models serving small models, bigger models, but agents, and agents means that they have they can perform an action for us as we speak. In the automotive industry, that could mean, yeah, in-car assistant that already exists to a degree. In-car assistant, yeah, and you can steer with your voice certain things. But now think this ubiquitously everywhere, like digital, but also house, outside, yeah. Maybe brain-computer interface, yeah. Neuralink is also going very strong with this. They had this 8.5 hours podcast with Lex Friedman. But I would go like this. I would say find the niche. The tech is already actually there. Yeah, of course, we'll get better, even more. Find the right niche, develop an agent that really provides value next, and rinse and repeat. And I would like spread across niches, because that's where things are going. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Martin, for joining me on your podcast today. It's been a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.